Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Hatcher's Homeschool. I'm your host, Margaret Hatcher, the Iron Chicken. In this, our very first installment of Homeschool Confidential, I talk with Wallace P. Thompson, author of the Field Game Field Guide. You'll find a link down in the description, and homeschool graduate. Wallace is a self-proclaimed game lover and expert in the fine art of leaving kids the heck alone. In the Field Game Field Guide, Wallace offers not only impeccable instructions for playing classic games from Banana Slug to Mafia, but also bigger lessons like how the sportsmanship we develop in childhood shapes us into better people and what can be learned from being sent off the proverbial cliff. It is sharp, funny, and unexpectedly profound with insights for everyone from parents to oil roughnecks. When he's not writing, you'll probably find Wallace skiing, throwing a frisbee, or quietly observing the games nobody knows they're playing. At just 19, he's already showing us what can happen when homeschoolers go all the way. In our chat, Wallace shares laughs, lessons, and thoughtful answers to Homeschool Confidential's character questionnaire, inspired by the late, great James Lipton. Be sure to watch to the end when Wallace shares what he discovered that helped him overcome the anxieties and insecurities felt by many who grow up outside the system and offers a hopeful message for homeschool families. It was a delight to talk to such an insightful and clever young man, and we can't wait to see where he goes from here. And now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Wallace P. Thompson. Thank you very much, Wallace, for joining me. We're so glad to have you here on our little journey to really promote the joys and wonders of homeschool.
hmm
So let's just jump into the questionnaire, shall we? So first off, what sort of home education did you receive?
I was unschooled, just sort of the lingo I heard growing up, and then I stopped using it because it was confusing to people. But I really had next to no curriculum formally, so there was like pretty much no time spent in the kitchen with the pen and pad, just doing school at home. So I mean, I did very little traditional schooling, even in a homeschool sense.
Awesome. And why did your parents decide to homeschool you?
Well, I asked my mom about it. She said that both her and my dad's experience with school was not excellent, and that they saw it as sort of a waste of time. And they also saw it as the quo for education. They, were of the opinion that if you wanted to make the world a better place, or a worse place, I should say, then going to school would be a good place to start.
So they didn't necessarily want to give their most precious possession over to the system to break.
No, not necessarily.
All right. A few
I
more.
don't think they could have broken.
Yeah. Seems to be that homeschoolers are built a little bit more resiliently. All right. Moving on to some lighter ones. What is your favorite word?
Definitely don't know. That's like just really hard. I feel like it's one of those things you gotta just know. I have some people who know their favorite word. I got a buddy whose favorite word is usurper.
Mm-hmm.
Great word, sounds great, rolls off the tongue well, but I don't think I have one.
I like the first word was truck. That's
Truck is my first word.
that's pretty sweet. And your least favorite word?
Gotta be obey.
Mm.
Don't like how it sounds. Don't like what it means. Nobody who ever obey is never used in like a voluntary way because you're either following is perfectly fine. You got a leader, you follow the leader. Obey, they're like it communicates a level of coercion.
Now, were you a kid who just was not willing to kind of get in line and get in step with everything, or is this something that you've kind of developed
No,
as
I
you've
was
grown
I
up?
was yeah, I was particularly stubborn and rule averse. I had strong opinions about rules that I found to be arbitrary. I thought the idea of an arbitrary rule was dumb, and I was sometimes wrong about whether the rule was arbitrary or not. But that definitely didn't make me get along well with the little bit of public school I experienced. Um, but it was also just sort of part of my personality growing up, even though I was not in school. There are plenty of rules out of school.
Absolutely.
for one to rail against.
And it's interesting that you've kind of codified the rules of certain games. Less ambiguity
I make
means
the rules
less,
now.
yeah, you make the rules.
Yeah.
So, what advantages did homeschool give you over a public school education, do you think?
I mean, way more time, way more opportunities to do things. I mean, if I was working, public school is essentially a full-time job. So if I'd been working a full-time job since I was in kindergarten, I would have had no time during the middle of the day, 5 days a week, most of the year, to do anything that I wanted to do that wasn't within school. So, I mean, there are almost every part of my childhood took place in the middle of the week. So the things I wouldn't have been able to do are too many to count.
I mean, obviously, you used your time wisely to have gotten yourself to this point. Um, Now, are there any things that you felt you missed out on by not going to public school?
Oh, for sure, for sure. There are some common cultural experiences that most people experience. There's like homecoming dances, there's prom, there's uh some more troublesome social dynamics that people sort of relate to after they get out of school, and then I just didn't really experience that. And then definitely towards my later years, what would have been my later high school years, like my junior and senior year, I had a car and I was working, and then high school really forces you to continue to socialize with a large number of people. But of course, not being in high school, having a car, I was much more independent, and I spent a lot of my time working, and so I think I didn't socialize as much as I would have liked to, just because I was the one who had to find people. But that was only once I had a car. Before that, my mom was responsible for finding friends and people for me to meet, not necessarily friends, but new people, and she did a very good job.
So, did you have kind of a core group of fellow homeschoolers, or was it
Oh
just
yeah, oh yeah, for sure. My best buddy is my mom's best friend is actually the mom of my buddy's best friend, and I've known him since I was 7. He was 7. His little brother as well. I've got most of my friends are homeschoolers. I have some people who I would consider friends who are not homeschooled, but obviously I spent most of my time with people whose schedule allowed them to hang out with me and for me to hang out with them. So it was difficult to maintain a close relationship with someone in school because they're just busy most of the time.
and now that you're at an age where it's more equal footing amongst your peers, do you find
Mm-hmm.
that there's a disconnect between you, your homeschool friends, and the people who have graduated from a traditional public school?
I mean, I think a disconnect is sort of a strong word. I have plenty of coworkers who are similar age that I can relate to, obviously on a human level. There's some stuff we have a hard time relating on. Most of it insignificant. And then there is, I mean, to be honest with you, sometimes the graduates of public school just don't seem as well socialized, as personable, as friendly. And that's obviously not like a blanket statement about everybody who graduated from public school, but the only aversion to public schoolers we ever had was the fact that they simply were not as fun or as friendly or as easy to get along with or as good at most things. And so obviously you're not going to bring yourself down to a lower level. There was probably some ego in that, but that was our observation.
Absolutely. And you're coming out of kind of an odd time, even for the public school students, where most of them were locked out, but were forced to kind of continue on as though there was anything normal about schooling.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
interesting insights. So, now, what sound or noise do you love?
Ooh, gotta be thunderstorms and like rain on top of a canvas roof or just like any roof. Rain is really good.
That's for sure. What sound or noise do you hate?
Nails on cheap nylon. Those
That.
cheap backpacks you get for your kindergartners, fingernails on those. I can't stand that sound.
Do you feel prepared for life?
Yeah, I mean, I think the honest answer is probably no, but anybody who tells you at like 19 years old that they do feel prepared is probably lying, like, or delusional. I think my experience of life and getting to experience that sooner than public school kids has led me to conclude I still have a ton to learn. So, like, yes and no. I think I'm more prepared than a lot of people my age, and I think I'm prepared enough to go get after it. But am I fully prepared? Absolutely not. That I don't think that's possible.
I think your honesty in engaging with that question shows a lot of maturity that is not available in a lot of 19-year-olds, but wonderful. I don't think anyone ever feels ready. So 19, 25, 45, it's going to be a learning curve forever. So good stuff. Now, if you were reincarnated as a plant or animal, what would it be?
Definitely a crow. I like crows more than ravens because I sort of like to root for the underdog. And the corvids are very cool, but ravens are like better in every way. They're bigger and smarter and stronger and faster. And crows are just like ravens, but like a little smart, a little smaller, and a little dumber. I feel like I could be a crow.
Make friends with the crows and you won't have problems.
Yeah, they hold a grudge. I sort of respect that. They hold a
Absolutely.
grudge. They'll tell other crows about you.
Oh, yeah. And intergenerational grudges, I believe.
Yes, they do. They hold a really very powerful grudge.
Now, what living person do you most admire?
I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. I actually told this to my mom, and she was like, she couldn't believe that I didn't have a living person I most admired. But I don't have one that comes to mind.
Well, you're accepting applications for being impressed, I think.
Sure. I mean, I've been impressed by a lot of people. It's just really hard to pick one
Pick
person to say you're my idol.
Absolutely. And what virtues do you admire in your friends?
Definitely humor, big one. Loyalty is, I mean, humor and loyalty are like the big two.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you've made very long lasting friendships, which is great.
That's the plan. Yeah.
And what is your greatest accomplishment?
Probably the book. Probably the book. Field Game Field Guide. It's probably the greatest thing I've ever done because it took the most time and the most effort, and it turned out really well.
Now, what drove you to actually sit down and do the book? I think there's some staggering statistics about people who want to write a book, who actually do write a book, and who actually bring it to the end goal of publishing it.
I think the idea for the book I had when I was like 12, 11, and I remember it specific. I don't remember exactly when, but I remember it was a specific game of capture the flag where we had a discussion about certain optional rules or variations that we were going to play or not going to play with. The discussion was extremely brief. It was like, are we doing free walkbacks? No. Are we doing jails? Yes. Are we doing this? And it was like four phrases, and we had figured out every variation of the game. And as we sort of walk into our sides, I'm thinking to myself, man, somebody ought to write this stuff down because, like, we're going to forget all of this at some point or some of it. It ought to be written down. So I had that in my head. Somebody should write down a manual to these games. And then I was 14, I started working with little kids. And then I had all these thoughts and opinions and observations about games and learning to play them in general. And I sort of started writing a book. And then but I think the real thing that allowed me to finish it was probably the encouragement of my parents. They thought it was an excellent idea. My mom had the um, idea to hire a friend of ours as a coach who's an author. She's an author. She became my writing coach and editor, which is how my first book that was written from 14-year-old first drafts actually ended up being a good book instead of really bad, which it easily could have been. But so definitely, I think it was everybody has some inspiration to write a book, but I only finished it because of the encouragement of the people around me.
Well, you're very lucky in that regard. You did
That's
a great
true.
job. I have to say that I was enraptured, I guess, by the first sentence here. The frustration of being a slow runner. I know it well. I had
Yeah,
to
I
laugh.
was a terrible runner.
So that really got me in. And I love that you even remind people how to choose teams. The simple things like that was, just really insightful and kind of brought me back to all of those conversations that, yeah, you have as a 10, 12-year-old, discussing with your friends whether or not tag backs are
Yeah,
allowed and where's home free and all of that. So it's really both a wonderful story and just, kind of a reconnection of the models that games teach us, and also a very practical piece of gear to bring to all of our homeschool events. We've used it a number of times to just, remind kids of the rules of this or that or teach them a new game. So, how many games are
I'm happy to
actually
hear that.
in here?
I think it's at least over 4 dozen. I want to say I want to say in the 40s.
Wow.
And I'm hoping to bump that. One day I'll release a second edition. I'm
Oh,
always
amazing.
collecting
I'm going to
notes
give this another.
because I'm always collecting notes on new rules or variations I may have left out or even new games. And one day I'll release a second edition that's just got more games.
I would love that. More games. There's probably never ending well. You could do international games.
Yeah, no, there's a ton of games. It's going to be. I hope to release multiple editions throughout my life, just not to redo the book, just to expand it so that it becomes more. Uh, what's the word? Not inclusive.
Complete.
Yeah, complete. That's the word.
I love that. So you already have some goals for the future, some ideas for the future. That's very exciting. Now, the big question, if heaven exists, what would
Mm.
you like to hear God say when you enter the pearly gates?
He's gonna look at me. He's gonna look at me. He's gonna point his finger at me. He's gonna go like, "You lucky son of a." Oh, I probably shouldn't swear. He's gonna be like, "You." I do have a sense of humor. Get in there,
You little
because
scamp.
you little scamp. Because I feel like if heaven exists, I'm just relying on my personal relationship with God. Because if I've probably said many blasphemies. To be fair.
I hope there's not a list somewhere.
No, there's not a list, and they're not horrible things. I got a thing for words, and I say a lot of them
Keep doing that.
with almost zero regard for what other people think of the words.
Keep doing it. You need to bring all of the words out, or else we'll forget them and how important they are.
Mm,
All right. So now, do you know who James Lipton is?
no, and I looked him up, and I seemed like an interesting guy, but it was a peculiar question for me. I couldn't figure out what does this mean. Is this just like a marker of history, or what is this guy's relevance to my life?
Nope, just that I'm ripping off his format.
Oh, well, good. Well, we
Yes.
don't have to talk about him anymore then.
It's a wonderful format. He stole it from Proust, so it's a long line of yoinking this one. Very funny. Glad that you haven't heard of him. Um, so, I mean, that kind of covers what I wanted to go over.
Hmm.
Besides the field guide, what other things is are taking up your time now that you are no longer doing studies, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, I still
Studies.
do. I still do some studies. I mean, I think kind of as much as I ever did. Right, I've been meeting with a math tutor for a long time, doing some mathematics, and of course, I I am going to complete one of these days the high school equivalency test, uh, which I do not think will be very hard, but I would like to actually have a diploma. Just I'd like the piece of paper. Um, I did some welding work or some studying welding. I'd like to get a welder. I have no space in my house for a welder,
Mm,
but I will at one point get a welder. Otherwise, I work quite a bit right now, and I make pizzas. That's what I do for work. And it's almost ski season, and then I'll be doing a lot of that. Very
excellent.
fond of skiing.
recreationally, or do you do instruction or anything like that at the Hills?
No, I never got into instruct. I've never tried it. I could definitely teach some. I could teach children who are learning for the first time. I'm an okay skier, but I'm not. I couldn't teach someone who knows how to ski better.
Sure. Well,
But I do
even
it
the confidence
recreationally.
to,
Yes.
get in front of a group of children and say, follow me, as you say, follow, don't
Oh, I
obey.
could do that. I could do that.
Lots of fun. Well, I mean, do you have anything to share with other homeschoolers, either kids or parents? Just not necessarily advice, but something funny you'd like to share, or
Sure. I mean, and I'm going to be very brief with this because I don't want to speak more on it than I have finished fleshing out my head. Sort of a thought I've been dwelling on for a while. I had a conversation with a friend of mine recently that got me thinking of it again. When I was 17, I got it. I was nearing the end of high school, ostensibly. Um, we were into the final year. My peers who were in public school were going to be graduating soon. And I sort of got it in my head that I was behind. There was no particular reason I got this in my head. 17, you got a lot of anxieties. It happens. Who am I as a person? Am I going to make it in the world? So, of course, if you're doing something different than everybody else and have been for your whole life, at some point you're going to be like, I've made a huge and terrible mistake. And I think speaking to my friend about this, who was also homeschooled, he said that he thinks every homeschool person has this experience at least once in their life. If they're mature, they blame themselves. Why didn't I go to high school once I had a car? If they're immature, if they're more immature, they blame their parents. Why did they make this terrible decision for me? But after having that thought, rolling on some of those anxieties, the primary one being I'm not properly socialized. I got it in my head I completely internalized what people say about homeschoolers. They're not properly socialized. They all end up weird. I am weird, but I think I would have been weird anyway. Uh, I started working in the pizza shop, and for a time, I was working with some of my peers, actually, not people I knew, but people who were actively in high school. And within a couple of weeks, all of the anxieties were gone because essentially what I had discovered is okay, I'm actually doing pretty good. Like, compared to these people, I'm certainly on the level at least. Like, it wasn't an ego trip. It was just like, there, I'm doing okay, right? And I think that's probably the experience that every homeschooler will have because until it is accepted by society, there's going to be people telling you that it's not the correct way to raise your kids. And then as those kids grow up, they're going to be hearing that. They're going to be hearing all how you're going to ruin your kids, and they're going to think, "Am I ruined?" And you're your own worst critic, and so it's really easy to be like, "Well, I have this flaw, and I'm socially awkward in this way, and I'm bad at math in this aspect." And all of these things would go away if I had just gone to high school. But my observation, time and time again, has always been homeschoolers are as adept at the skills that really matter in real life, if not more so, than people who went and even graduated from public school. So don't worry about it. It's gonna be fine.
I'm very glad that you said that. I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that you're right. All of us are going to end up weird no matter what. So to say that one group will be weirder than another, I think is a little foolish. But that's some wonderful thoughts to, I think, end on. So I'm going to end it with just an invitation to anybody else who is a homeschool grad or who knows somebody who is a homeschool grad that should be featured and celebrated because I think that it's important for homeschoolers who have gone through it to speak to each other and to speak to those still going through it so that maybe we can take a little bit of that stigma away and give our kids the confidence and the pride in how they're being educated and how they're using their minds. So I thank you very, very very much for taking the time, and I wish you everything the best in all of your endeavors going forward. So, where can people find you and do all of that?
Well, I think the best place to find me right now would just be right through my website, fieldgameguide.com. That's where I'm selling my book, and that's right now the only domain that I have actually activated. The other domains I own, don't go there. There's nothing there. Um, I have an Instagram that I occasionally post to. That's Lord_Yammersworth. And then I also have a Twitter that you'll be able to find through the Instagram because I can't remember the handle right now.
Well, if I can
But
get the technology working well enough, I'll put all of those links in the
oh, that
in the
yes, that
description.
that would be great. But yeah, that's where to find me. That's where I do stuff.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's wonderful. And yeah, to anybody out there who would like to be featured as Wallace has been, or even just in a written form, please feel free to reach out to me. Contact at prairietideprojects.com or just direct message me here. All right, Wallace. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to stop this here recording. And that wraps up this installment of Homeschool Confidential. A very special thanks to Wallace P. Thompson for joining us and sharing his story. It was truly a pleasure. Don't forget to show him your support. Visit fieldgameguide.com to get your copy. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss out on our next session here at Hatcher's Homeschool. If you know a homeschool graduate who's worth crowing about or have a success story of your own, we'd love to hear it. Send your story to contact at prairietideprojects.com for a chance to be featured in a future episode of Homeschool Confidential. Thank you for attending class at Hatcher's Homeschool, where our minds are free range and we go till the rooster crows. Until next time, this is Margaret Hatcher, the Iron Chicken, signing off. Class dismissed.